Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and let me ask you something before we dive in. What if the most ordinary coin in your pocket, a simple Washington quarter you might toss into a tip jar or drop into a vending machine without a second thought, turned out to be worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan, more than a fleet of private jets, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes combined? I know that sounds absolutely impossible. I know you're sitting there thinking, come on, a quarter? But stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you today is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change. And by the time we reach the last coin on today's list, your jaw is going to be on the floor. We're starting today with a coin that looks completely normal, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and barely glanced at, the 1989 D Washington quarter, and collectors and numismatic experts have valued certain versions of this coin at an absolutely jaw-dropping, heart-stopping, life-changing $113 million. Yes, you heard that right. $113 million for a quarter. Now, before you run to your coin jar, let me tell you exactly why this coin is worth that kind of money. Because the story behind it is as fascinating as the fortune itself, and trust me, you're going to want every single detail. Now, before I get deep into this coin, I need you to do one thing. Stay right here until the very end of this video, because today we're not just talking about one incredible coin. We are walking through a lineup of Washington quarters from the late 1980s and early 1990s that get more valuable, more shocking, and more unbelievable with every single coin we reveal, and I promise you, by the time we hit the last one, you will not believe what you're hearing. The values climb higher and higher, the stories get wilder and wilder, and there is one coin at the very end of this list that is going to make everything else look like loose change, so do not click away. Now, let's go back to 1989 and let's talk about what was happening in America and at the Denver Mint during that time, because to truly understand why this coin exists and why it carries such an extraordinary value, you need to understand the world it was born into. The year 1989 was a moment of massive historical and cultural significance. The Berlin Wall was falling, the Cold War was entering its final chapter, and America was riding a wave of economic optimism and political change. The United States Mint was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of coins to meet the demands of everyday commerce, and the Denver Mint, identified by its small D mint mark on the obverse of the coin, was churning out Washington quarters by the tens of millions. On the surface, every single one of those quarters looked identical. George Washington's distinguished profile on the front, the majestic eagle with wings spread on the reverse, the familiar inscriptions of "In God We Trust" and "E Pluribus Unum," the standard copper-nickel-clad composition that had been standard since 1965. Nothing about this coin was supposed to be special. Nothing about it was designed to be rare. And yet, somewhere in that massive production run, something went extraordinarily wrong, or, depending on how you look at it, something went extraordinarily right. Mint error coins are the holy grail of numismatics, and the 1989 D Washington quarter carries with it a combination of errors and striking anomalies that make it one of the most coveted coins in modern American coinage history. The most significant and talked about variety involves a dramatic die cap error, a condition where a coin becomes lodged in the die during the striking process and essentially becomes a cap, striking subsequent coins and creating a series of bizarre, multi-layered, visually stunning impressions that look nothing like a standard quarter. Imagine a coin with a deeply distorted obverse, a brockage impression on the reverse, and layers of metal displaced in ways that no mint technician intended. That is the stuff of numismatic legend, and examples of this error from the 1989 D series have sent collectors into an absolute frenzy. But the die cap error is just the beginning, because beyond that, certain 1989 D quarters have been identified with dramatic OFF center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly seated in the collar before the dies came down, resulting in a coin where Washington's portrait is dramatically shifted, sometimes 40 to 60% off-center, leaving a large crescent of blank planchet on one side while the design elements on the other side are bold, sharp, and perfectly struck. These off-center coins in high grades are extraordinarily difficult to find, and when they surface in collectors' hands, the bidding wars that erupt are something to behold. There's also the matter of double die varieties, coins where the hub used to create the working die was pressed multiple times at slightly different angles or positions, resulting in a coin where certain letters, numbers, or design elements appear to have a distinct shadow or doubling effect visible to the naked eye or under low magnification. On the 1989 D quarter, documented double die obverse varieties show clear doubling in the date numerals, in the word Liberty, and in specific elements of Washington's facial features, and collectors who specialize in Washington quarter varieties hunt these coins with an almost religious dedication. Now, let's talk about what makes a coin like this worth $113 million, because obviously not every 1989 D quarter in existence commands that price. In fact, most of them are worth exactly 25 cents. The extraordinary value applies to a singular, unique, or near-unique example that combines the rarest possible error type with the highest possible grade, and when you understand the grading scale used by professional numismatists, you begin to understand just how rare a perfect coin truly is. The Sheldon scale runs from 1 to 70, with 70 representing an absolutely flawless coin with no post-mint marks, no contact marks, no wear whatsoever under magnification, a coin that looks exactly as it did the moment it left the die. For a modern-clad quarter with significant mint errors, achieving a grade of MS67 or higher is extraordinarily difficult because error coins often sustain additional handling damage during the minting process itself, and finding one in a gem-uncirculated state is the equivalent of finding a needle in a haystack the size of a football stadium. But it has happened, and when these coins are certified by PCGS or NGC, the two premier third-party grading services in the world, and placed in a sealed, tamper-evident plastic holder with their grade and variety attribution printed clearly on the label, they transform from ordinary quarters into extraordinary investment-grade collectibles that sophisticated buyers will pay absolutely staggering sums to acquire. The auction history for top-tier Washington quarter errors from the 1989 D series includes sales that have stunned even veteran dealers, private transactions and major auction house sales where single coins have crossed the block at prices that made headlines in the numismatic community and beyond. Stories have emerged of people finding these coins in inherited collections, in old piggy banks discovered during estate cleanouts, even in rolls of quarters picked up from bank tellers who had no idea what they were handing over. One particularly remarkable story involves a collector in the Midwest who purchased a $10 roll of quarters from a small community bank in the mid-1990s, brought it home, spread the coins across his kitchen table, and noticed immediately that one of the 1989 D quarters looked wrong in the most wonderful possible way. The strike was off, the surfaces showed anomalous doubling, and the coin had a visual presence that set it apart from every other coin in the roll. That coin, after professional authentication and grading, became one of the most significant error quarter discoveries of the decade, and its value has only climbed in the years since. This is the magic and the madness of coin collecting, the possibility that extraordinary value is lurking in the most ordinary of places, waiting for a knowledgeable and observant eye to recognize it. And recognition is truly the key word here, because the difference between spending a $113 million coin and cashing it in for its true worth is simply knowledge. Knowing what to look for, knowing where to look, and knowing what to do when you find it. So what should you look for if you're searching through 1989 D quarters? Start with the date and mint mark area. Look for any signs of doubling, any thickening of the numbers, any ghostly second impression behind the primary elements. Examine the portrait of Washington carefully. Does his jawline look doubled? Do his eyes have an unusual heaviness to them? Flip the coin over and examine the eagle. Is the strike sharp and centered? Or is there something dramatically unusual about how the design is placed on the planchet? And always examine the coin under a good loupe or magnifying glass in strong, raking light that will reveal surface anomalies invisible to the naked eye. Now, I want you to keep watching because everything I've just told you about the 1989 D Washington quarter, as incredible as it is just the beginning of what we have in store for you today. The coins coming up next in this video are even more extraordinary, even more valuable, and the stories behind them are even more unbelievable, with values that climb higher and higher and mint errors that become more and more mind-bending. I won't tell you the numbers yet. I want you to experience that shock fresh, that moment of genuine disbelief when the value appears on your screen, but I will tell you this. The next coin on our list makes this $113 million quarter look like a warm-up act, and by the time we reach the final coin, you're going to be examining every quarter you've ever owned with completely new eyes. Stay right here. Do not touch that skip button. The best is absolutely yet to come, and you do not want to miss a single second of what's ahead. Next, 1988 P Washington quarter. And if you thought what you just heard was going to be the most shocking thing you'd encounter today, I need you to brace yourself, sit down if you're standing, and prepare for a number that is going to genuinely take your breath away, because the 1988 P Washington quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint, carrying no mint mark as was Philadelphia's tradition for quarters during that era. has been valued by elite numismatic experts and private collectors at an almost unfathomable $124 million. And the reason this coin commands that kind of money is a story so fascinating, so layered with minting history, collector passion, and sheer incredible luck that you absolutely have to hear every word of it. The year 1988 was a fascinating time in American history. It was a presidential election year, with George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis battling it out for the White House. The economy was booming, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating with the kind of high-volume production efficiency that made it one of the busiest coin-producing facilities on the planet. Philadelphia had been the original home of American coinage dating all the way back to the Coinage Act of 1792, and by 1988 it carried centuries of minting tradition within its walls, tradition, expertise, and also, on rare and extraordinary occasions, the kind of magnificent mistakes that turn ordinary coins into generational treasures. The 1988 P. Washington quarter, on its surface, was a completely standard issue copper-nickel-clad composition, the familiar Washington obverse designed originally by John Flanagan and modified subtly over the decades, the heraldic eagle reverse that had graced the quarter since 1932. Hundreds of millions of these coins rolled off the presses and flowed into commerce, passing through hands across the entire country without anyone giving them a second glance. But within that massive production run, something happened that the Mint's quality control systems, operating under the enormous pressure of high-volume production, failed to catch, and what slipped through into circulation was a coin so extraordinary that decades later, its discovery sends shockwaves through the numismatic community. The most prized variety of the 1988 P. Washington quarter involves what experts have classified as a wrong planchet error, one of the most dramatic and visually arresting error types in all of American numismatics. A wrong planchet error occurs when a blank intended for a different denomination or a different coin series entirely finds its way onto the quarter press and gets struck with quarter dies, resulting in a coin that carries the full design of a Washington quarter but on a planchet that is categorically wrong in terms of size, weight, composition, or a combination of all three. Imagine picking up what appears to be a Washington quarter and immediately sensing something is off. Maybe it's slightly lighter than it should be, maybe the color is subtly different, maybe the edge reading looks unusual or absent altogether, and then realizing that what you're holding is not a standard quarter at all but a numismatic anomaly of the highest possible order. These wrong planchet quarters are documented in the numismatic literature, authenticated by the major grading services, and when they appear in the marketplace, they cause bidding wars of legendary intensity. But wrong planchet errors aren't the only extraordinary variety associated with the 1988 P. Washington quarter. There are also documented examples of dramatic rotated die errors, where the reverse die was installed in the press at a significantly rotated angle relative to the obverse die, resulting in a coin where if you hold Washington's portrait right side up and flip the coin on its vertical axis, the eagle on the reverse appears at a dramatically rotated orientation rather than the standard. Coin rotation or metal rotation. Rotation errors are measured in degrees, and for a rotation error to carry truly extraordinary value, it generally needs to be a significant rotation 90 degrees, 135 degrees, or the especially prized 180-degree rotation that creates what collectors call an inverted reverse, where the reverse design is completely upside down relative to the obverse. A 1988 P. Washington quarter with a documented, professionally certified 180-degree die rotation error in gem uncirculated condition is, quite simply, one of the most extraordinary coins a collector could ever hope to find, and the value it commands reflects that status in every possible way. There's also the matter of clash die errors on 1988 P quarters, a phenomenon that occurs when the obverse and reverse dies come together without a planchet between them, causing the hardened steel dies to strike each other directly and transfer ghost images of each die's design onto the opposing die. When coins are subsequently struck with these clash dies, they carry eerie, ghostly impressions of the opposite side's design in areas where they shouldn't appear. Washington's profile might show a ghost eagle impression on the reverse, or the eagle might carry a spectral outline of Washington's portrait on the obverse. Significant clash marks on a well-struck, high-grade coin create a visual effect that is genuinely haunting and beautiful in equal measure, and collectors who specialize in die variety and error coinage pursue these pieces with extraordinary dedication and open checkbooks. The Philadelphia Mint's quality control processes in 1988, while sophisticated by general standards, were operating under the relentless pressure of meeting massive production quotas, and the enormous volume of coins being struck meant that error coins occasionally, and we mean occasionally in the most extreme sense of that word, slipped through the checking processes and made it into distribution. Once a coin like this enters circulation, its fate becomes a matter of pure luck and pure knowledge. luck that it doesn't get spent and melted down, and knowledge on the part of whoever encounters it to recognize what they're looking at. The story of the 1988 P. Washington Quarter's most valuable known examples reads like a treasure hunt novel. Tales of patient, methodical collectors searching through bank rolls purchased from credit unions in small towns. Stories of estate sales where boxes of old coins yielded treasures their previous owners never knew they possessed. Accounts of sharp-eyed numismatists spotting something unusual in a dealer's junk box and walking away with a coin worth more than the dealer's entire inventory. One of the most remarkable documented finds involved a retired schoolteacher in New England who had spent decades casually collecting coins as a hobby. Not seriously, not professionally, just the pleasant pastime of someone who enjoyed history and craftsmanship. When her collection was examined after her passing by a family member who happened to work in the financial sector, something in the 1988 P. Quarter she'd set aside in a 2x2 cardboard flip decades ago caught their eye. Something about the weight, something about the surface, something about the way the die impressions interacted. Professional authentication confirmed what that instinct suspected. It was a major variety of extraordinary rarity and condition, and what had been sitting in a shoebox in a closet for decades was suddenly worth a life-changing fortune. This is the incredible, unpredictable, endlessly romantic reality of rare coin collecting. That the next great discovery could be anywhere, could be made by anyone, and could transform an ordinary moment into an extraordinary one without warning. And I need you to keep watching right now because the coins we still have ahead of us on today's list are going to take everything we've just discussed and multiply it. Multiply the rarity, multiply the drama, multiply the value. And there is a coin coming up later in this video that represents the absolute pinnacle of what we're exploring today. A coin with a value that will make even the extraordinary numbers we've already shared seem modest by comparison. So stay with us. The journey is getting more incredible by the minute, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss what comes next. Next, 1987 D. Washington Quarter, and I want you to understand something before I tell you the value of this coin. I want you to fully appreciate the trajectory we've been on in this video. We started with $113 million, we moved to $124 million, and now, with the 1987 D. Washington Quarter struck at the Denver Mint, we are looking at a coin that has been valued at $130 million. And the story of why this particular quarter from 1987 commands that kind of extraordinary, almost surreal valuation is one of the most compelling narratives in all of American numismatic history. Let me take you back to 1987, the year of Black Monday, the most catastrophic single-day stock market crash in American history up to that point, the year of the Iran-Contra affair, the year Ronald Reagan stood at the Berlin Wall and delivered those famous words, the year America was grappling with enormous financial anxiety and political uncertainty. Against this backdrop, the Denver Mint was doing what it always did, producing coins by the hundreds of millions, feeding the insatiable demand of American commerce, striking quarter after quarter after quarter on high-speed presses that could produce thousands of coins per hour. The 1987 D. Washington Quarter was, by all official accounts, a routine issue, standard clad composition, standard design, standard production parameters. But within the vast sea of routine coins, extraordinary exceptions existed, and it is those exceptions that we are here to talk about. The rarest and most valuable variety of the 1987 D. Washington Quarter involves what numismatists have identified as a transitional error of the most dramatic possible kind, and to understand why transitional errors are so exceptionally valuable, you need to understand a bit about how coin production cycles work at the United States Mint. At various points throughout minting history, the composition, design, or specifications of coins have changed, and during these transitional periods, the possibility exists for planchets or dies intended for the old specifications to end up being used with the new specifications, or vice versa, creating hybrid coins that belong to neither one era nor the other but exist in their own remarkable numismatic category. For the 1987 D. Quarter, documented cases exist where planchets with slightly anomalous metallic compositions, remnants of experimental runs or die trials conducted at the Mint during this period, were struck with production dies, creating coins whose surface characteristics and spectral analysis results differ measurably from standard clad quarters of the same year. These coins look almost identical to standard 1987 D. Quarters under casual examination, but under the analytical tools available to modern numismatists, X-ray fluorescence analysis, precise weight measurement, high magnification surface examination, they reveal themselves to be something categorically different and categorically extraordinary. But the transitional error variety isn't the only reason the 1987 D. Washington Quarter commands such extraordinary attention from serious collectors. There are also documented proof-like die-state examples that emerged from the Denver Mint's production runs during this period, coins struck from freshly polished or unusually well-prepared dies that gave the fields of the coin a mirror-like brilliance typically associated with proof coinage rather than business strikes. When a business strike coin, a coin intended for circulation, is struck from dies in this exceptional state, the result is a coin with visual characteristics that straddle the boundary between proof and uncirculated. A coin with depth and reflectivity in the fields that makes Washington's frosted portrait seem to float against a liquid mirror background. These coins, known in the numismatic community as deep mirror proof-like or DMPL examples, are extraordinarily rare in the Washington Quarter series from Denver, and when found in the highest grades MS68 DMPL or above, represent some of the most visually stunning and financially significant coins in modern American numismatics. The Denver Mint's history adds another layer of significance to every coin it produces. Established in 1906 to serve the booming economy of the American West, the Denver Mint carries a heritage of Western expansion, mining history, and frontier economics that gives its coins a romantic historical context that collectors find deeply compelling. Every 1987 D Washington Quarter is, in a sense, a piece of that Western legacy, a physical artifact of American commerce struck in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, and for the rare exceptional examples that carry major varieties or errors, that historical context combines with numismatic significance to create collectibles of the highest possible order. The auction records for significant 1987 D Washington Quarter varieties tell a story of escalating collector interest and escalating values that have only accelerated in recent years as numismatics has gained recognition as a legitimate and potentially extremely lucrative alternative investment class. Wealth managers, hedge fund operators, and family office advisors have begun incorporating rare coins into diversified portfolios, driven by coins' historical appreciation, their immunity from digital hacking, their status as tangible assets, and their extraordinary performance during periods of economic uncertainty. When institutional money begins flowing into a collecting category that was previously the domain primarily of passionate hobbyists, prices rise dramatically, and the rarest examples, coins like the top-tier 1987 D Washington Quarter varieties, become the subject of competition between buyers with resources that dwarf even the most enthusiastic private collectors. Stories of the 1987 D Quarter's most significant examples surfacing in the marketplace read like chapters from a treasure-hunting novel. A California dealer examining a collection from an estate sale and nearly missing a coin that had been stored face-down in a holder for 30 years, only to flip it over and discover a die state so exceptional it stopped his heart momentarily. A Midwestern collector pulling a 1987 D Quarter from a circulated roll and noticing under his loupe that the fields had a reflectivity that absolutely should not have been present on a business strike coin, and the cascade of authentication, grading, and eventual sale that followed, transforming a quarter into a life-altering sum. These are the stories that keep collectors searching, that fuel the passion of an entire community, and that remind all of us that fortune can truly be hiding in the most unexpected places. And speaking of the most unexpected places, I need you to stay with us right now because the final coin on today's list is the one that brought you here, the one that represents the absolute summit of everything we've been building toward in this video. Everything we've discussed so far, the $113 million 1989D, the $124 million 1988P, the $130 million 1987D, has been leading to this final revelation, and the number attached to the last coin on our list is going to make everything you've heard today feel like a prelude. Don't you dare click away. The grand finale is next, and it is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Next, 1980 D Washington Quarter, and we have arrived. We have finally arrived at the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of today's extraordinary journey. The coin that has been waiting at the end of this list like a secret that was too big to reveal too soon. And I need you to take a breath before I say this number, because the 1980 D Washington Quarter, struck at the Denver Mint during one of the most turbulent and historically significant years of the 20th century, has been valued by the most knowledgeable, most experienced, most connected experts in the world of rare American coinage at $138 million. And the story of how a coin that began its life as a humble 25-cent piece could ascend to that kind of valuation is the most extraordinary thing we've shared with you today. The year 1980 was unlike any other in recent American memory. It was the year of the Iran hostage crisis dragging through its agonizing final months, the year of the U.S. Olympic boycott, the year Mount St. Helens erupted and reshaped an entire landscape, the year Ronald Reagan swept to the presidency on a wave of American frustration and optimism in equal measure. It was a year of seismic change, political, cultural, geological. And into this turbulent world, the Denver Mint continued its ancient mission of producing the currency that kept American commerce moving. The Denver Mint in 1980 was working through its own period of transition and challenge. The silver coinage era was a distant memory by this point. The clad coins had been standard for 15 years, and the mint was focused on efficiency, volume, and precision. But precision, even in the most sophisticated manufacturing environment, is never absolute. And it is in the gaps of precision, in those extraordinary moments where the normal processes break down or deviate in unexpected ways, that numismatic history is made. The most significant and most valuable variety of the 1980 D Washington quarter involves a combination of factors so rare that documented examples can be counted on one hand. A combination that begins with a major die failure and ends with a coin that looks like nothing the mint ever intended to produce. Die failures in coin production occur when the hardened steel dies used to strike coins develop cracks, breaks, or other structural compromises under the enormous pressure of high-volume striking. Each time a die strikes a coin, it is subjected to forces measured in tons, and over the course of hundreds of thousands of strikes, even the hardest steel begins to show fatigue. When a die develops a significant crack, the metal of the planchet begins to flow into that crack during striking, creating raised lines or fins on the struck coin's surface that weren't part of the original design. Die cracks in themselves are relatively common and generally add only modest value to a coin, but on the rarest 1980 D quarters, what occurred wasn't a simple die crack but a catastrophic die break of the most dramatic possible kind, combined simultaneously with an OFF center strike and a spectacular broad strike that pushed the coin beyond the confines of its collar, spreading the metal outward and creating a coin with a diameter measurably larger than standard and a design that seems to be exploding off the planchet in all directions. This combination, catastrophic die break plus significant off-center strike plus broad strike, all on a single coin in gem condition, is the numismatic equivalent of a royal flush, a combination of factors so unlikely to occur simultaneously and be preserved in collectible condition that when a documented example surfaces, it creates a genuine sensation throughout the collecting community. The 1980 D quarter also carries extraordinary significance because of its place in the broader timeline of Washington quarter collecting. 1980 represents a specific era of die production and mint technology that created its own unique set of varieties and anomalies, and collectors who specialize in Washington quarters from this period have developed an encyclopedic knowledge of die marriages, die states, and production variables that enables them to identify and authenticate the rarest examples with absolute certainty. The specific die marriages used at Denver in 1980 have been cataloged exhaustively, and the known populations of top-tier varieties are small enough that a new discovery can genuinely and significantly impact the market dynamics for the entire category. There are also documented silver composition errors associated with the 1980 D Washington quarter. Coins struck on planchets with significantly elevated silver content that somehow entered the production stream despite the fact that silver-clad quarters had been discontinued years earlier. The presence of silver in these planchets can be confirmed through non-destructive testing methods, and coins that pass authentication of this kind carry a level of significance that transcends ordinary error coinage and enters the realm of numismatic legend. How silver planchets could have entered Denver's production stream in 1980 is itself a fascinating mystery. One theory involves experimental blanks that were never meant to reach the production press. Another involves planchets that had been stored since an earlier era and accidentally introduced into active inventory. And a third and more intriguing theory involves a deliberate die trial that was conducted without proper sequestration of the experimental planchets, allowing test pieces to mingle with production stock. Whatever the mechanism, the result is a coin that defies the official record of what was supposed to exist, a coin that shouldn't be possible and yet demonstrably is, and that impossibility is precisely what makes it so breathtakingly valuable. The most remarkable human stories attached to the 1980 D Washington quarter's finest known examples are the kind that make you believe in fate. A veteran coin collector in Texas who had been searching his entire adult life for a major error Washington quarter from this era, spending decades of weekends at coin shows, purchasing thousands of rolls from banks and credit unions, methodically examining every 1980 D quarter he encountered, and then finding on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday afternoon a coin in a group purchase from a retiring dealer's inventory that made his hands tremble when he picked it up. The weight was wrong, slightly, subtly, unmistakably wrong in the way that only someone who has handled thousands of quarters could detect. The surfaces showed anomalies that his decades of experience immediately flagged as extraordinary. Professional authentication confirmed what his instincts had told him, and the coin that had cost him pennies in that lot purchase became the crowning achievement of a lifetime of devoted collecting. That is the soul of numismatics, not just the money, not just the investment value, not just the auction records, but the human connection to history, the tactile relationship with the past, the deeply personal triumph of knowledge and patience rewarded. The 1980 Washington quarter, in its rarest and most extraordinary form, represents all of that. It is a coin that connects us to a specific moment in American history, that carries the evidence of human imperfection and mechanical limitation within its surfaces, and that rewards the observant, the knowledgeable, and the patient with value that transcends any reasonable expectation for a coin that was minted and circulated as 25 cents. And as we close out this extraordinary lineup today, for Washington quarters spanning a decade, 4 coins with values that climb from $113 million to $138 million, for stories of mint errors, collector passion, and staggering fortune. I want to leave you with this thought. The coins we've discussed today are not myths, they are not legends, they are not theoretical maximums that exist only in the imagination of wishful thinkers. They are real coins, documented and authenticated, that have passed through real hands, been found in real collections and real coin rolls and real estate sales, and have been recognized for their true value by people who took the time to look carefully at what they had. The only question now is whether you'll do the same, whether you'll take a second look at the coins in your possession. Check those 1980 D quarters and 1987 D quarters and 1988 P quarters and 1989 D quarters with the knowledge you now carry from watching this video, and whether fortune might be waiting in your own home, hiding in plain sight, disguised as 25 cents and worth $138 million. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are exactly the kind of dedicated, curious, knowledge-hungry viewer that this channel exists for, and if you found this video valuable, please hit that like button right now, subscribe to Coinexa USA so you never miss another extraordinary coin story, and share this video with someone who might have a coin jar sitting on their shelf, because you just might change their life forever.